Chapter 4. It was early evening and would be light for a few hours yet. Splidge remembered he was no longer a child and could stay up as late as he liked. But he felt sad there was no one to tuck him up in bed and say good-night to any more. With his newfound freedom, Splidge decided to explore his surroundings. He wanted to walk the palace's perimeter wall. Splidge was surprised at the ruinous state. Gaping holes pierced the wall and were big enough to squeeze through to the outside. Splidge climbed up a series of steps to the top of the fortification and found himself on a pathway running along the top of the crumbling crenellations. It fired his imagination. What was it like in the old days when knights of the realm occupied the palace when it was a castle? From behind the battlements, soldiers would guard the king from attack. Did they carry pikes like the wooden cutouts in the throne room? Splidge pictured in his mind an opposing army of aggressive warriors camped on the outskirts of the city. They lived in circular tents, planning an attack. Just for fun, Splidge play-acted the make-believe scenes out loud. "How shall we cross the monster-infested moat, sire? We shall make special pontoons from the trees. How shall we scale the walls, sire? Lean long ladders against them. What shall we do if they pour boiling water upon us, sire? We shall carry on regardless, men. We must take Castle Gud at all costs." Splidge broke off. He thought he'd heard a grunting noise. He listened for a moment and then resumed the adventure silently in his head. He walked along the pathway to a small circular tower interlocking with the wall. Crowned with a conical roof, it was similar to the ones on the main building, but in miniature. There was just enough room for one person to stand in. A sentry would have been stationed here, and Splidge pretended he was on guard. He peered through the tiny window slit, looking for enemy fighters. What would he do if he spotted some? Why, he would shoot imaginary arrows and kill them. A pudgy hand grabbed his shoulder. It hauled him back out into the daylight. Splidge spun round to see a big brute with horrible pig-like eyes. Pigface lifted the boy off the ground and shoved him hard into the space between the battlements. Splidge's heart raced, for if the man let go, the boy would fall straight into the stinky moat 30 feet below. "Are you the Cragflinger?" Pigface demanded, squeezing the lad's neck. "What? Let me go." "Are you the boy that got the job at the palace today?" "Eh?" "Did you reply to the advertisement in the market square?" "Let go." "Not until you answer the question." "You're choking me." "I know. That's the intention. If you want to breathe again, just tell me the truth. Has the king employed you to be his Cragflinger?" Pigface thrust the lad out further so that his legs were dangling in mid-air and there was nothing to hold on to. "I will drop you if you don't answer." "I can't breathe." Splidge was going purple and his eyes rolled backwards. "Yeah, you're the Cragflinger all right. I recognise you from the market." The piggy-eyed man pulled the limp boy back through the battlements and relaxed his grip. "Now, I want you to listen to me, sunshine. Pack in the job and leave the city." Splidge's head was spinning. He didn't understand what the horrid man was talking about. "Leave? What do you mean, leave? I've only just arrived." Pigface lost patience, and he shook his captive firmly. "You stupid boy, you're not paying attention. Listen, you numbskull. You are to resign. Quit. Leave. You're redundant. The king has made a mistake. Your services are no longer required. Got it?" "But—" "There are no buts."
"But—" Splidge protested. "I haven't even started work yet."
"Good. Then they won't miss you, will they? Now, just bog off." Pigface kept his firm grip. "Now let me put it another way. Consider this chat a warning. If you don't jack it in, and we're talking immediate like, I will come back for you, and next time I won't be so pleasant. Understand?" Just then, the horrid man's expression changed, and he let out a blood-curdling howl and shot backwards. Released from the brute's grip, Splidge was in big trouble and tottered backwards over the wall, slipping down towards the moat. Instinctively his hands shot out and he grabbed at the battlements, and his fingernails scraped against the flaky stonework, but he managed to catch hold of a protruding brick and hauled himself back up. Pigface was hopping up and down in distress, desperately trying to kick off something orange and hairy from his foot. It had sunk its teeth into his fleshy ankle and was reluctant to let go. Splidge realised the miniature assailant was none other than the straggly creature that had jumped out of the kitchen sink and flown past him on the stairs earlier that day. Pigface finally yanked the animal off his foot and lobbed it over the rampart. "Ouch!" he winced, unable to put his full weight onto his bloodied leg. A stabbing pain shot up the limb, and Pigface cried out again, "Ouch!" Then he spotted Splidge by the battlements and limped over to him. "You have been warned, boy. Leave the palace. Forget about cragflinging. If you don't, you'll be in serious trouble." And then, looking about him in case the creature returned, the thug sloped off. Splidge watched him descend the steps and clamber through one of the holes in the wall.
"What a nasty piece of work,"
said a squeaky voice. An orange face poked through the crenellations, and then its hairy body followed. It was a strange creature, like a mop, but without the wooden handle, and roughly the size of a large melon. It looked at Splidge for a moment before it sat on the wall and licked its fur contentedly. Splidge stared at the thing in disbelief. "Did you speak?"
"Yes. Did you?"
Well, yes. I just didn't expect you to."
"Oh? Why not?"
"Well, you're a..."
"I'm a what?"
Well, you're a rodent, aren't you?" The orange mop creature chuckled.
"I'm not a rodent."
"Oh, then you must be some kind of shaggy cat?"
"That's worse. No, I'm not a shaggy cat."
"Well, you are shaggy."
"And you are a stupid boy."
Splidge shrugged his shoulders, not quite sure what to make of this speaking thing in front of him. "Look, can we start again, please?"
"Certainly."
Splidge thrust out his hand. "My name is Splidge."
"Hello, Splidge."
The creature held out a black paw. Splidge took it gently, and they shook hands and paws. Two black button eyes stared back at the lad, and for a moment Splidge felt a bit awkward. "Have you got a name?" he asked.
"Not really,"
it squeaked.
"I'm a crag."
"A crag?"
"Yes, and from what I gather from that nasty man, you are the new cragflinger."
Yes, I suppose I must be." Splidge had a brainwave. This shaggy orange creature was some kind of vermin, and the cragflinger's job was to get rid of the blighters. Clearly the palace was overrun with them. He had spotted one in the kitchen sink and another on the main stairs. The king needed someone to fling them away. At last, Splidge had resolved the mystery of the cragflinger's job. However, it put him in an awkward position. After all, he was having a cosy chat with one of these weird animals, and it didn't seem right to dispose of it just like that. The crag had saved him from the brutish man, and where was he supposed to fling the mop creature? In the moat? Before he could answer his own question, the crag smiled at him and said, "Goodbye," and hopped off the wall into the palace garden. It scurried along and disappeared into a vicious-looking bunch of stinging nettles. Splidge watched it go. Had it all been a dream? A pig-faced bully had roughed him up and told him to quit his job, and now he'd just met a talking animal. If his new job was to rid the palace of these chatty pests, then how was he supposed to kill them? Splidge strolled back to the cowshed and thought he would ask Groggins at supper time, because he would know exactly what to do. As Splidge was about to push open the rickety door to his new home, another orange mop thing rushed past him and stopped a few feet away.
"You're not very good, are you?"
it taunted. Splidge frowned. "Pardon?" The crag waddled closer and looked directly up at him.
"I said, you're not very good."
"Not very good at what?"
"Cragflinging, obviously."
"Oh, give me a chance. I've only started today."
"So, do you think you could catch me then?"
"Catch you? Why on Gud would I want to catch you?" The crag's eyes twinkled, and it began to laugh. "What's so funny?"
"Well,"
chuckled the orange mop-like creature, its fur all wet and soggy,
"if you don't catch me, how the devil do you intend to fling me?"
The crag had a point. "Of course I can catch you," Splidge said, with growing frustration. "And when I do, I will throw you in the moat and watch you drown."
"Hey, that's not the idea."
"No, I dare say I've got you worried now, and I promise I'll do the same with all your brothers and sisters and all the other crags I find lurking around the palace. Just you wait and see."
"Hang on a minute. I think you've got the wrong end of the stick."
The crag didn't finish its sentence. Splidge was advancing on the thing, and he looked like he meant business. The crag turned and ran, and Splidge ran after it, hot on its tail. Not that the orange mop creature had a tail, but you get the idea. The crag was quick. Being small, it was able to crawl under things and dive into the occasional rose bush, and then pop out on the other side. Splidge knew he would be torn to shreds if he ploughed after it. Sharp thorns would lacerate his smart new outfit, and that would never do. The little mop on legs was a cheeky devil. It sneaked up behind the boy as he bent down to peek under the potting shed, and it bit his bum. As Splidge was straining to see through a grubby window in the palace greenhouse, it dropped out of a tree, plopped onto the boy's head, messing up his hair, and then it zigzagged across the lawn and vanished in the undergrowth. It was the irritating giggling sound it made as it escaped that really bugged Splidge. When the annoying creature was perched on a molehill, apparently asleep, Splidge stealthily approached from behind a privet hedge. There was only 20 feet of grass between the hedge and the molehill. All he needed to do was sprint across, grab the dozing animal, and before it had the chance to realise what was happening, toss it into the moat. But Splidge hadn't anticipated how wet the grass was, and consequently how slippery the mud had become. So when he tried to stop, he skidded out of control and tumbled headfirst into a manure heap. "Oh, for goodness sake!" he screamed, seeing his new clothes covered in stinking horse poo.
"Give up,"
the crag said, trotting over and laughing at the stinky lad. "Shut up! Look at me! My jacket is all messed up!" Splidge tried to brush off the worst bits, but he knew the stain would never come out.
"Oh, you do honk!"
The crag wrinkled its nose. "Thanks a lot." Splidge sat down on a pile of logs. He was fed up. This wasn't the sort of job he was expecting. What a nightmare! He'd only been there 5 minutes, and already he was soaking wet, worn out, and covered in the stinky mess that falls out of a horse's bottom. And now a bothersome talking mop was laughing at him. "I wish I had a job like Snotty. All he has to do is climb a few lampposts. I'd make a good lighter and snuffer."
"What's the matter with you?"
the crag asked, mystified by the boy's sudden change of heart. "What's the matter? Everything. Look at this place." He pointed to the palace. "It's crummy. The whole thing is falling to bits. It's full of old farts that look like they're going to keel over any minute. Groggins must be 102, if a day. The king is right off his rocker with his wooden crown and cut-out army. There are no young people here, and then there's you, stupid crag things, hundreds of orange hairy mop creatures swarming all over the place, and it's all down to me to exterminate the lot of you. I think that pig-faced bully was right. I should quit." The crag chuckled throughout the tirade. At one point it clutched its belly and rolled over with uncontrollable laughter. "I don't know what you find so amusing," Splidge grumbled. The crag smiled. "You've got it all wrong. Although you are right about this place, it is full of ancient fogies. But the king means well, and Groggins isn't all that bad, apart from the fact that he hates crags.
And there are no young people here, which is why someone like you is a breath of fresh air. But the bit about Crags overrunning the palace, it's plain wrong."
Splidge stared at the little beast. He hated to admit it, but it was quite cute, with its large eyes, wet stubby nose, and tiny mouth. However, if it got any nearer, he would definitely kick it. "What do you mean, wrong?" Splidge asked.
"There is no infestation. There's only one crag, and that's me. And you're not supposed to drown me in the moat."
"Why not? You're a pain in the neck." The crag laughed some more, and then suggested the boy go and get cleaned up, and perhaps afterwards they might have a chat about things. Splidge wanted to wash his new clothes, but he wasn't sure if he wanted to converse any further with the beast that got him in the mess in the first place. Back at the cowshed, Splidge washed away the nasty poo stains with a rag he found next to the wash basin. The crag made itself comfortable on a stool beside the warm stove.
"It's like this," it explained. "Cragflinging is the national sport of Gud. The reason you probably haven't heard of it is because the tournament only takes place every 6 years.
Makes sense, I suppose. I would have been too young to remember the last time."
"Exactly. Anyway, there's a big prize for the winner."
"Oh?" Splidge sat on another chair which he'd pulled close to the cast-iron stove to dry off.
"Yeah, 1,000 gudders."
"Blimey, that's a lot of money. But what's that got to do with me?" The crag's eyes widened, a faint smile playing on its funny little mouth.
"It has everything to do with you, old chap. The king challenges other cragflingers to compete against the Royal Cragflinger. If they can beat him, they win the prize."
Splidge picked up one of his new boots and wiped off the brown slime. "I wonder if I could enter."
"I don't think you'll have any choice in the matter."
"Why's that?" The crag beamed back at the boy.
"Because you are the Royal Cragflinger."
Splidge dropped the rag in astonishment. "What?" The crag exploded into hoots of hysterical laughter, snorting and spluttering as it pounded the wooden stool with its hairy mitts. "I'm the Royal Cragflinger?" This was the job that King Guddamac had advertised on the poster in the market square. Suddenly, it all became clear. The conversation in the throne room, the reference to being a cragflinger, first class, and an expert in the noble art. It had taken a while, but the penny had finally dropped. It had nothing to do with ridding the palace of an infestation of orange fluffballs. "You mean to say that people from all over the land pit their wits and great skill in cragflinging against me? Me, who up until a moment ago had no idea what the sport was about?"
"Yes!"
the crag exclaimed, thoroughly enjoying the boy's discomfort. "I don't know whether to laugh or cry. It's worse than when all I thought I had to do was chase after you and chuck you in the moat."
"Well, there is still a lot of chasing to do, Splidge, but you won't be flinging me into the moat."
"That's a pity." The crag frowned. "Just a joke," Splidge said, pleased to get his own back. "So, if not the moat, what shall I be flinging you at then?"
"Oh, that's simple," the crag replied. "You'll be flinging me at a wall."
Supper consisted of cabbage soup, celery pie, and turnip slices. Splidge pushed the food around his plate and wondered how much pocket money he had left. The slop in front of him was not at all appetising. Perhaps he might have enough gudders for a nice meat pie. He was a big boy now, and he figured that he could slip across to the high street, join his friends, and have something decent to eat. The young cragflinger sat in the large kitchen he had investigated earlier that day. It was dark now, and a solitary gas lamp, flickering morosely with a distinctive hissing sound, lit the room. In the centre of the kitchen was the preparations table. The saucepans he had spied previously dangled dangerously above him, and a spider was hard at work, spinning a new web between them. Groggins had cooked the meal, such as it was, and dished it up when Splidge arrived. It was lukewarm and tasted bland. The stale bread was just palatable if dipped in water, and the homemade ginger ale was all right if swallowed quickly. Similar fare was on a tray for the king, who ate separately in his chambers. the old servant, winked at the boy, and Splidge listened to his creaking joints, clicking bones, and shuffling feet as Groggins traipsed off, slowly, towards the stairwell. What will the food be like by the time it reaches the king? Splidge pushed the plate away and slipped out of the door. Convincing Perch to lower the drawbridge was hard work. He was tucked up in his hammock reading a saucy romantic novel when Splidge finally located his tiny room above the gatehouse. Very well, I'll let you across, Perch sighed, but I'm damned if I'm waiting up to let you back in again. You'll have to return in the morning. Fair enough. I'll stay over at a friend's place, Splidge said. Well, I wouldn't make a habit of it, lad. I won't. The drawbridge will be down again at sunrise. Thank you. Splidge gave the broadest smile he could muster and danced across the platform before disappearing into the night. The lighting in Defoe's coffee emporium was dim, the seating basic, and the hygiene poor. But the delicious aroma of the coffee was exquisite, and the pork pies were exceptional. What Mr. Defoe added to them to make them so popular was a carefully guarded secret. Of course, there was pork, and it was the peculiar blend of herbs and spices and the waxy pastry casing that made them a speciality. They were enormous and cheap. During the evening, coffee houses in Gud were not as busy as ale houses. The gritty brown beverage overstimulated the minds of its patrons and kept them awake. Most preferred to visit the taverns to imbibe in a more soporific drink, such as beer. It got them a bit drunk and blotted out the worries and concerns of their hard lives. Defoe's coffee emporium was frequented mostly by radical thinkers who huddled together to hold secretive discussions, eager to start something. They dreamt up countless plans and contemplated ambitious schemes to overflow the government. But it was all a sham. The caffeine, pork pies and pipe smoking were far too enjoyable for them to actually do anything. Snotty, the lamppost boy, had met up with Splidge that night, and they were sharing the biggest pie their joint funds could afford. The sooty-faced boy listened intently to Splidge's news about his job and his visit to the palace. The interview with the king was amusing, and the adventures with the talking crag made Snotty giggle. Hearing about the painting made him curious. Must have been a shock to see the picture of your father. Do you think he'll ever come back? I don't know. I hope so. Snotty nodded. Then he stuffed a chunk of pie into his hungry mouth. I ain't got a dad no more either. What happened to him? Splidge asked. He got into a fight with some bad uns in an alley a few years ago, and he died. My mum had to run away when I was small because he used to beat her. He wasn't very nice, so I don't miss him. When he was killed, I was put in an orphanage. You haven't had it easy, have you, Snotty? No, none of us have really, have we? But you had a good dad, though, didn't you? Yes, and then he went away. I thought it was because he didn't like us anymore, or I'd done something wrong. Now I know it was because of the wars. Snotty wiped his face on his sleeve and promptly put back more dirt than he took off. What are these wars? No one wants to seem to talk to me about them. I know, but I'm going to find out, Snotty. I'm sure Groggins knows more about it than he lets on, so I need to get him to talk. The door of the coffee house swung open, and the animated chatter from the other customers halted simultaneously. Everyone turned to look at the newcomer. A girl, dressed in leather with raven black hair, crossed to the counter and ordered some coffee. The portly Mr. Defoe flashed a smile and poured thick black aromatic liquid from his large ceramic jug into a smaller one the girl had brought with her. Snotty's eyes were on stalks. Caw! She's a bit of all right, ain't she? Splidge stifled his surprise and excitement. She was the girl whose umbrella he had fixed earlier that morning. It seemed such a long time ago. They both ogled her in her tight, figure-hugging outfit. How old do you think she is then, Splidge? She's older than you, Snotty. Yeah, I know, but not that much. I think she's out of your class. Yeah, yours too. I think she might go for your snazzy new jacket, though.
But you might have to do something about the smell. It does pong a bit.
Splidge rolled his eyes and silently cursed the crag. He looked back to the girl, willing her to notice him. Just then, Freckles and Lucy Longtrousers came bounding in. They spotted the lovesick boys and the remains of the pork pie and breezed over to see them.
"Hello, boys,"
they chimed as they pulled up chairs to join them, annoyingly obscuring the view of the raven-haired girl.
"Can we have a bit?"
Freckles asked, pointing at the pie.
"Help yourself."
Splidge struggled to look past them. The girls grabbed handfuls of the meaty feast and covered them in red sauce.
"Did you get that job you were looking for, Splidge?"
asked Lucy Longtrousers.
"Yes, I did, thank you."
"Yeah, at the palace, no less," Snotty added.
"Blimey,"
Freckles said, filling her mouth with pie.
"What do you have to do there?"
Lucy Longtrousers asked, biting into her crust.
Mumbled Splidge. "What's the matter with you? Didn't you hear me?"
"We're looking at her," Snotty nodded to the leather-clad beauty at the counter. The two girls yanked their heads round in unison, then Freckles zipped hers back. Typical boys.
"We're just looking,"
Snotty protested.
"Splidge isn't. Look at his face. He's gone all soppy. I think he's smitten."
The two girls burst into raucous laughter, and Splidge's face reddened. The girl with the raven hair turned to face the commotion. Splidge looked up, and their eyes met, fleetingly. Her purple lips carried the hint of a smile, but in the next instant it vanished. The door opened again, more forcefully this time, and a tall, thin man lingered in the entrance. He was the most hideous man Splidge had ever seen. Not ugly like the brute who had attacked him that afternoon, but ghoulish, with white, pallid skin drawn tightly back over his deep, hollow cheeks. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone was holding their breath, as if Death himself had entered. The menacing figure looked neither left nor right, just straight ahead, ignoring the obvious discomfort of the patrons. Splidge felt a shiver go down his spine, and Snotty whispered, "He gives me the creeps." "Come, my dear, time is of the essence. We have important work to do." His voice was subdued, and every syllable was meticulously pronounced. The leather-clad girl handed some money to the proprietor and crossed back to the door with a jugful of hot coffee. Splidge felt his heart jump as she gave him a fleeting glance. Conversation in the coffee emporium didn't resume immediately. People were afraid to speak, fearful that the gruesome figure might suddenly return. Snotty broke the silence. "Who dug him up?" Freckles grimaced. "That was the Baron." "So that's what the devil looks like." Splidge took a nibble of what was left of his pork pie and asked, in his most innocent voice, "Who was that girl?" Lucy Longtrousers looked at him for a moment, and then answered with a serious face, "You don't want any truck with her, Splidge. That's the Baron's daughter, and it's said if any boy talks to her and the Baron finds out, they're as good as dead." Splidge went to the window and peered into the night. There was something compelling about the raven-haired beauty, and one way or another, he was determined to see her again. Snotty lived at the gasworks. Well, to be truthful, he lived in a beaten-up shed next to a gas-pumping station on the outskirts of the city. As it was closer to the palace than Splidge's family home, Snotty invited the newly appointed Royal Cragflinger to stay with him for the night. Splidge wrapped himself in a greasy blanket and lay on a pile of dirty coal sacks. It wasn't much of a bed, but at least it was dry. The shed was raised up on small, mushroom-shaped pillars to prevent the incessant rain from seeping in. Fortunately, the roof was sound, and the shack was relatively warm. The pungent smell of gas, escaping from the pipes snaking through the shack, had Splidge wondering about his friend's unusual profession. "I was thinking, Snotty," he said, stifling a yawn. "Climbing all those lamp-posts to snuff out the lights is pretty hard work. Wouldn't it be easier to simply turn the gas off from the supply?" "Yeah, I could do that. The switch is right above your head," laughed the soot-smeared lad, pointing to the rusty metal valve in the rafters. "So why don't you do it then?" "If I did that, I'd be out of a job." Snotty laughed. "Luckily my boss hasn't figured that out yet." Splidge grinned at him.
Good night, Splidge.
Good night, Snotty. Minutes later, all that could be heard in the battered old shed was the contented sound of two boys snoring their heads off.